Track Wrestling here with Jesse Leng, CEO and managing partner of Rudis. We're in your office right now, Jesse, and I think everything hinges upon your slogan, a way of life. How'd you come up with that?
I don't remember if there was an exact moment of eureka. That's the right slogan, but it just always felt like that was inherent to the journey of wrestling. So I forget the exact moment, but I know we were throwing a lot of different taglines, and it always felt like it was there, and we never even officially called it a tagline until later in the operation of the brand. And it's just true. I mean, wrestling is a way of life, and that's why it stuck, and we ended up putting it on every shirt. And I think, sometimes we try to change the back of those shirts, and we're like, oh, maybe we'll evolve the message a little bit, or the branding element of it, at least the visual. And people are like, no, we like that on there, leave it on there. And I'm like, okay.
Why did you want to get started in this business?
I was coaching wrestling with Jeff Jordan full time. I'd been coaching with him and working for his camps, and we'd been dabbling in the, buying clothes. We were a consumer. His camp does a significant amount of business, and Jeff has some of the best wrestlers in the country, and you see what they like, and you're trying to fit their needs. And there was a struggle that, when you're trying to buy these goods and get them on time and service the customer, to do that in a really, a way that's reflective of the experience you're trying to provide was a challenge, and to provide the product you wanted. So we were actually going outside the wrestling community to buy some things, and couldn't quite find that fit. And my college roommate was a guy by the name of Tommy Rollins. Tommy was already familiar with the clothing, world, in that he tried to launch a brand himself called Conquest, and it didn't work. I don't think he understood really the complexity of the business, because he was trying to do that at the same time he was training for the Olympics. And unfortunately, he didn't. Fortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, he didn't necessarily achieve the pinnacle in either. He was an Olympic alternate, but it gave him, the right foundation to say, I know something now. And he had been bugging Jeff and I with this idea of let's start a brand. And he had some good core concepts and intellectual property bringing to the table. And basically, we came up, we sat at went to a local diner and drew up a business plan on a napkin. And I was the guy that kind of, maybe didn't even fit the mold. Is you have Jeff Jordan, who's this, already has an established business, and is a big time personality in the sport. And you got Tommy Rollins, who had a bit experience in clothing and was a big time name in the national wrestling community. And I'm this other guy that was working for Jeff, and was just putting in some sweat equity. But I kind of did that. I just took the ball and ran with it, and just made a to-do list and another to-do list and another to-do list, and they kind of allowed me to drive a little bit of the work element of it. And next thing you know, that partnership was very strong and solid, and I leaned on those guys a lot, and it just kept growing. And they kind of gave me the torch and said, hey, why don't you run this on the day-to-day.
Kyle Snyder is the face of your brand right now. You have a Kyle Snyder shoe. How did you approach that? How did you get Kyle Snyder involved in the Rudis brand?
Kyle is a natural fit for a lot of reasons. He is what we feel like wrestling is all about, and he is what our company's all about. So it's more than just the product or the brand message. It's really like our culture. So when I think of Kyle's value, it isn't the t-shirts or the shoes we sell. It's what his influence is here on this business. And it's easy to see when you meet Kyle that he's special. And so from day one, when you early on in his career, he was a target, and he was our first living sponsored athlete. When you say face of the brand, I think that's true today, but I think he stands equal to Dave Schultz for us. The first pillar from our brand message on an athlete perspective was Dave, and we felt like Dave is that Bruce Lee aura of, he holds this Muhammad Ali, Bruce Lee aura of an athlete and what they mean to our brand. And he has the ethos of wrestling in his DNA. And so for me, it was really aligning someone like Kyle with someone like Dave. And you can't put just anybody up against Dave Schultz. It's like Dave Schultz is globally known. So we had to wait for the first athlete to come along that could stand side by side with Dave, and I felt like Kyle was that guy. And the reason I think, he jumped on board and he had a lot of options was he got to know us as people. So it wasn't necessarily how strong our business was or how cool our brand was or how cool our products were. I think he took the time to really, learn who we were. And when I think about Kyle Snyder, he's always been a really good decision maker. He had the opportunity to quit wrestling in college after he won the Olympics in 2016, and he made a really mature decision to go back, finish his degree, and I think he built his legacy up to something that's way bigger. And he took the time, same thing here, to make a very educated decision, get to know us, and since then, I feel like he's part of the family.
How'd you get Sarah Hildebrandt part of the family? She's, I think, the first female you've had being one of the faces of Rudis. How did you get her on board?
Much the same way. I mean, I feel like to fit the Rudis mold and to be a Rudis athlete, it's not about how many times you get your hand raised or how many medals you have. It's who you are as a person, how you compete, how you express yourself. And, I had been watching her for a long time, before Budapest. And I was just waiting, honestly, for the World Championships to get over, and she happened to have a great World Championship. So it was just it's reaching out and building a relationship. So she comes from a great wrestling family, and when you get, and her dad's a really strong business guy. And I think those are two core ingredients for building a great relationship, because one, he understands what we're trying to do on a business level, and two, they understand what wrestling's all about. And when you get people like that in the door, it's a good fit.
You wrestled at Ohio State. You wrestled at the lightest weight class, 125 pounds. Do you feel like there's some advantages to that where you're never going to have a guy that is smaller than you? You always have to go against bigger guys. Does that play out in some way here in this business?
What is that? Short man syndrome, Napoleon complex? I mean, you call it what we want. I have to use it as an advantage. I don't know if it is or it's a disadvantage. You can call it either way. But certainly I think everything, nature versus nurture, and the formative experience as a human being is one of collective experiences. And it's like we just accumulate these little experiences. So I don't know if being the smallest guy forces you to have a louder personality or, what it does. All I know is being 5'3" and 145 pounds. So I'm used to that. Fortunately, if you look around my business, I got a lot of those. And I communicate with a lot of those people. But it's funny because my partner is 6'4", 260, he wrestled the heaviest weight class, and we mesh very well. So I don't know if it has an advantage or if it's a disadvantage. You'll have to ask my team members here and my partners.
How does wrestling build you in a way that other sports or other professions cannot?
I think any sport can build you. I think any profession can build you. What wrestling requires of you, should you really do the experience right, is to pour yourself out. And a lot of places in life, I don't think you're actually called to pour yourself out into whatever you're doing. But there's a lot of greatness in that, and it builds character. People say, does it expose character or build it? It does both, and it teaches you a lot of lessons. I mean, I think one of the biggest strengths is learning how to be vulnerable. And this is something that someone that's dedicated to excellence is constantly doing. It's a process of self-reflection, analyzation, and rebuilding. In wrestling, you do that every single day. You do it in the course of one match. And I think anybody that loves their craft in any walk of life and is serious about it has to go through this. And wrestling does it in a very intense way because you're exposed for the world to see while you do this. You're out there one-on-one versus another human being, and you're pouring yourself out, and you're testing everything from your physical to your emotional to your spiritual self on a day-to-day basis. And I think when you do that, there's something really beautiful about it because you get in touch with a side of yourself that most people don't want to face. And I think when you enter business, there's a similar element. What I enjoy about business is the same things I enjoy about wrestling. I pour myself out every day, and I self-assess, and I self-reflect, and I say, did I live up to my own standard today? And then I do it again tomorrow.
What's next for Rudis?
Got to grow. We got to improve. We're not perfect. It's just like I talked about. We got to pour ourselves out. and we got to come back stronger. So the goal is every single day to get better. The mission is to elevate the sport. We are not perfect. We have a lot of improving to do, and we recognize that. And that's why I feel really good about our future, because we're not satisfied with anything. You know, I'm only satisfied with the effort. I love the effort our people put in, but the results will probably never be enough. And I think that's the same for a wrestler. Until you pin and tech every single person, you're probably never satisfied. And then even when you do that, you're going to critique your technique, your conditioning, you know, how you couldn't do it fast enough or hard enough, and that's what we want to do.
Your college coach was Russ Hellickson. Maybe one or two lessons that you carry with you from Russ.
Russ is a great example of a person with high morals and integrity and building people up. I mean, I think at Russ's core, he's a great leader. You know, he's a much better leader than he probably was a wrestler, and he was an Olympic silver medalist. And he lost to one of the greatest wrestlers of all time in Regan in the finals. So that's really saying something. So what I gained from Russ is just the ability to communicate people on a level where they want to follow you. So I'm always trying my best to be a servant leader, to make sure for my people that I'm leading by example, and that I'm looking out for their best interests. And that doesn't always mean making them happy. And I felt like Russ, for me personally, did a lot of that. And I didn't reach my goals in college personally, but Russ always treated me with a high level of love, care, respect, and he really wanted me to succeed. And I'll always be grateful for that.
Thanks, Jesse. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, guys.